I guess we're probably starting a little bit early. It's supposed to be at 7 o'clock. We've got about 10 minutes prior to that. I'd hate to start, but I will start with my introduction and tell you who I am. And we'll wait till the last minute, till 7 o'clock, just in case some of the other candidates are going to be those right on time. And I don't want any of them to lose any time whatsoever. Should that they do decide to come and voice their opinions and face y'all's questions and issues. I'm Steve Holloway. My family's been here in Bartow County. I guess they bought the farm up there in the Daresville in the 1940s. We're about as country as you can get. My father was in law enforcement. Started in the 60s. My mother worked in carpet mills during that time period, and I was raised in a very humble family on a farm. We worked hard. We did what was right. I went to a Daresville school, graduated there at the high school. After I graduated, went to work for my father. I always worked for my father, actually, since the time I was a little boy. We worked on the farm, and that's where we learned how to work hard. I probably lost more tools than I found that he wanted me to go get as a child. But anyway, we moved to Daresville, up there next to the cemetery. As a young man, I worked at the service station starting at 11 years old. At that time, I started receiving my first wages. And during that time, when I received those wages, I started buying my own clothes. I was very proud of that, and I've worked ever since. Every job I ever had, I worked hard. I tried to do what was right. After high school and after working for my father, I went and worked for a cousin in public service at a service station. I was hired from that service station out on 75 at Johnny Ward's directly to the Sheriff's Department under Don Thurman. Many of y'all may remember Don Thurman. He was a fine man, fine sheriff, and anyone that can be half the sheriff of Don Thurman to serve this county well. I spent 20 years there at the Sheriff's Office. Started my career there, ended under the current incumbent in 2005. After retiring from the Sheriff's Office, I went out and built my own business at the end of Holloway Road on that very farm where I was raised at. I've run it since 1986. Have a great business there. And I've learned a lot in my life. One of the things I learned, excuse me, was when the Daresville tornadoes came through, when they and devastated Daresville. We got to see when the federal government won't help, what a community can do. I got to see what North Point Church and other churches all across Bartow County came to do and rebuild a community that there was no saving unless everyone came together. And that is a debt that me as a person, I'll never be able to repay totally to Bartow County. I'll always be in y'all's debt. I'll always work hard, and I'll try to serve and do whatever I can to pay back that debt, including should y'all elect me to be your sheriff, I would do that. After I retired and I built my business, I was able to take that time and spend with my family and spend with my daughter through those high school years. And we got to travel, which if any of y'all haven't met, the driving force behind me sits right there. That's my wife. That's Miss Andrea. She's the only child to that very large man that sits beside her. Great man, very devout Christian, very proud of him. He's always stood behind me and beside me. But you know, like I said, I'm just a country boy that had 20 great years at Sheriff's Office, served, and I believe there's a lot that I offer to this county, and if you give me that opportunity, I will. As the questions come in, there's nothing off limits to me. I do not want any personal attacks on any other candidates. That's not what this is about. This is about the reason that we came together tonight is that for the citizens to be able to address issues for the candidates. The candidates were invited on, I believe it's April 28th. We had a 7 o'clock morning forum and they were invited then twice. They've invited out on the sidewalk to come. It's been in the papers. It's been on YouTube. It's been on Comcast. So there's been plenty of notice that what was going to occur tonight. And this is as fair that I believe that we could get, because the moderators tonight, because I thought hard about who could I get that would be fair and impartial to come up here and moderate 3 candidates for sheriff. And the only way I could figure out that would be fair and impartial would be to allow us to moderate ourselves and to ask questions and rotate through the questions, because that way it is fair. The questions were going to come from 2 sources, and those 2 sources tonight is there's a jug over there next to the door that will be brought up here in a minute. And if any of y'all have a question that y'all would like to write down and put in that jug, you most certainly can. The other questions, source of that I will answer, will be from you. If you have questions for them in their absence, I guess you can voice those questions, and I will answer what I can addressing those issues of what I will do with my administration and how we will rebuild that department to meet those goals, and what our mission will be to serve the citizens of Bartow best. But that's the reason we created this forum tonight. It was taken away from us. This is the first year that I ever have heard of that there wasn't going to be a sheriff's debate where the citizens could participate. And I wanted to make sure that did not occur in 2016. And that's how come I stand before you today, is to make sure that has not happened. And be general, but I appreciate and look forward to y'all's questions. Thank you. Get them one. All right. There's a jug back there. Would y'all bring the jug up for me? Got 3 minutes. Anybody have anything to say or anything special that they would like to make a public announcement about? All right. That's officially sealed there.
Since neither of you showed up, are you going to publicly question why, like in the newspaper or?
We will just, what will happen is that whatever questions are, it's all being videotaped. I'll submit those questions to the candidates for you. So if you have a question or an issue that you wish for them to be made aware of, the video will be available to them. Plus, I'll make the effort to see if my wife and my daughter won't help me get those questions to the appropriate party and see if they can answer y'all's questions privately or ever how they want to answer those questions. I have no idea how they'll address those issues. But we most certainly welcome anything you have to ask. Does anyone here, starting here, does anyone have a question for any of the 3 candidates or for myself? Anybody? This is going to be a short debate if you don't raise your hand. All right.
How are you going to fix 911?
911 currently is under the sheriff's office. I believe that we should have that where it's under, like other counties throughout the state, is under emergency management. And those issues haven't been addressed yet, but I believe that's where it is designed to be and will best serve the citizens of Bartow. But right now it is our issues that we'll have to do, and we'll have to address to make sure that they have the proper training, they follow proper procedures, and make sure the protocols are there so that they know what their job is, they know what their mission statement is, they know how to handle those calls, and regardless of and take out any judgment or irregularities or personal prejudice, or just make it impartial and make sure that they do their job. We all are citizens. We pay taxes to make sure that you're well served. And as your sheriff, I'll make sure that while it's under my command, that they will do their job. Yes, sir.
Under the current office, it seems that crime prevention is not the priority. How will you change that?
crime is absolutely unreal and high in Bartow County. And crime prevention is one part of the solution that we must do. And in my administration, we will have to restructure everything from manpower to make sure that our personnel are transferred, restructured so that they can get out on the streets. Right now, those officers are running themselves ragged. They're shorthanded, the ones that work road patrol. They don't have the resources due to being the manpower shortages. As it's anywhere between 8 and I think I've seen on some of the online statements, 20, 30, even 40 people short. Until I'm up there and look at what the manpower is and how it's being currently assigned and restructure it to make sure that we get the officers on the street to support our citizens. Once that issue is addressed, we're going to have to go out and to our citizens and to our communities and unite our everything from our neighborhood watch programs that we have and educate our citizens, give them the ability that they know that they have a sheriff's department that will come out, look at their circumstances. You know, often in law enforcement you hear about known criminals in the neighborhood or known drug houses. That's a sad thing that the community knows known criminals and that the law enforcement officers don't. We're going to have to get back to community policing where those officers are from your communities, whereas they know you, they see you every day, they sit down and eat lunch with you, or they eat breakfast with you, or they eat supper, whereas they're not strangers. You'll go and you'll share and you'll talk to an officer, and that officer should come into you and talk and approach you. Y'all should both be approachable, and the only way we can do that is to make sure that those officers in our communities are one, and they understand, and they from that area, and they know where the problems are. And once they know where that problem is, all they have to do is come to me or come to their other officers, and we'll unite with the communities, and we'll take care of those known criminals, and we'll put them on notice, and we'll put the known drug houses on notice that you're not going to be happy with what's about to happen to you. All right? Anyone else at this table? How about over here? Anyone at that table? Yes? Oh, okay. Ben?
I'm not here to bash nobody, but if you get in sheriff, are you gonna be able to control the drugs in the jail better than what they control now?
There was that, and I know where you're...
We had a lady that died in 2014. She laid 20 minutes before the nurse come, 45 minutes on the gurney. They released her 6 days before she died. And on Wednesday, on the facts today, there's a federal lawsuit against the Sheriff's Department and Clark Millsouth. If you can't control the drugs in the jail, then you can't control them on the street.
I concur. Also, my administration, what we'll do is that there has to be certain procedures and protocols, and they have to be addressed and you have to follow. You know, leadership is about that you look at the issues, look at the problems. That's a problem that the citizens of Bartow, that's going to be handled in federal court and civil court, and it's going to be a big price to pay. Keeping drugs out of the jail is something, because many of the people that are placed in jail are addicts, and they have their addictions that they just don't, once you get signed that card and you're put behind bar, your addiction doesn't stop. You still have that need for drugs, and you'll fight, you'll buy, you'll pay, you'll steal, you'll do anything you can to try to make and ensure that your addiction is continued to be fed. Well, as law enforcement officers, we have to fight that, and it's going to be a tough job, but that's how come you have well-trained, well-dedicated, motivated officers that will do their jobs. They'll follow those procedures and those protocols that are set, and their standards, so that they will serve and do what's right. And it starts with leadership, and we have to have that leadership to hold them to task, because we don't want anyone of our family, regardless of where they're at in their life, and every family somewhere has people that are in jail. So every family has people that are addicted to certain drugs, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. drugs destroy good families. And when they're in jail, we should do everything we can to try to keep that drug addiction isolated and get the help that that addicted person needs. And they most certainly don't need easy access to drugs in jail. All right?
Yes, sir. Dovetailing off that, can you touch on the manpower issue in the jail division?
Well, like I said, there's a reported shortage. And that shortage can be from many different areas. Is the manpower that we currently have, is it being deployed correctly? Is it serving the citizens correctly? Is it being best practices being used to decide what officers are assigned to what areas? Is it courthouses or the county administration building? Is it being protected and misuse of manpower? Are there officers in the jail that can be put on the road? We're going to have to look at ways of going in and restructuring and seeing, as your sheriff, that is there a way that I can go out into the community? Because I can tell you, I'm very proud of Bartow County. You can go into our community and you can ask for volunteers, and they will come. All you have to do is show them that we have a problem and the way that we can address this. We have to go out there and either collect from those people in our communities and say, we have critical jobs that need to be filled by you, or we have a place that, can you volunteer, or do you need a paying job? And take those jobs in those critical areas and free up those certified officers so I can put them on the street so that they can address those crime issues, those drug issues, whatever it needs to be done. I mean, it's not a simple solution. It's easy to say, but it's going to take some time and everything, but it can be addressed. And it's just a matter of letting everyone know what the problems are.
There was a 2.5 year drug investigation of running a field mill, and it took them 2.5 years to bust it. What is the reason that anybody would give for letting them sell that many drugs to our kids and our people? And what would you do to stop it? How would you stop it?
Well, the two administrations in question are part of the Carsville, or the Bartow Carsville Drug Task Force. The two, one of them's the current incumbent, one of them was the police chief at the time that pill mill was going on. They chose to allow it to go for an extended period of time. They'll have to answer why they let that go. I have no idea. I can tell you under my administration, several things I will not do that was allowed during that time period. I do not believe that it's in the best interest to allow drug dealers to operate. They destroy families, they destroy communities, they are allowing those drugs on our street. And one of the parts that many people probably don't understand about during that time period of how these drugs, you know, it was a $200,000 a week operation this pill mill had here in Carsville. They determined the cost and the amount of those drug sales by stopping people that left that pill mill. They stop the car, write the ticket, and do a consent to search. On the vehicles they could get in, sometimes they would find several hundred pills. At the end of that traffic stop, they would return those pills to either those addicts or those distributors. And that's not right. You do not become part of the problem to solve a problem, and you don't do it for an extended period of times. I do not believe that I should put any citizen at risk so I can conduct an investigation that is 2.5 to 3 years. How many lives were placed in danger? How many victims were victims of crime so that those addicts could support their drug habits? How many burglaries occurred so that they could do that? It's just a no-win. It was an ethical, moral, law enforcement failure, and I will not do that. If I have to close that, even if I can't get that conviction, to send that person off for 20 or 30 years, is it worth sentencing a person to die or to throw their life and destroy a family? It's not, in my opinion. So when I conduct investigations, the first chance I can put them in jail, I'm going to put them in jail. First chance I can close down that doctor and report him to the appropriate authority. I'll close him down and pull his license so that he can't write those prescription drugs. All right? Yes, sir.
My name is Rob Taylor.
Yes, sir.
The incumbent sheriff in 2010, my son was shot point blank with a shotgun, and he closed the case in less than 24 hours. He used and I know you don't want to bash anybody, but he used his force instead of investigating to intimidate me for 2 years, follow me around. Will you close cases in 24 hours? Will you investigate all leads? Will you look at all the evidence? Because what we have right now is not working.
Once again, I concur, sir, and I'm sorry for your loss, and I have no idea of how great a loss you suffered. Fortunately, I've never experienced that. I've seen many families that have experienced it. But that's the driving force of why I believe that things have to be changed, and it takes leadership to change that. And I was a crime scene investigator. I was one of the first state-certified crime scene investigators in the state of Georgia. And I know that 24 hours, there was times that my wife can attest that as I worked crime scenes, especially involving deaths, because you have to be very careful that you don't jump to the wrong conclusions, because you affect many lives. You affect families that have lost loved ones. You have the effect of perpetrators and their families that perpetrated those crimes. And so you have to be thorough. And 24 hours is, I wouldn't even have all my evidence collected in 24 hours and documented. And I may have some preliminary evaluations that I would give to my investigators as I work the crime scene. But it's a team effort, and it's also, you should include the families and see where they are. They have information. I'm sure in all these investigations that it's not like what you see on TV, that they can do something in an hour. Some things can be done in an hour, but you can't even, the organizations and the multitasking of working with the families of the victims, working with the families of perpetrators, takes many, many days, many, many hours. There's some of y'all in here in law enforcement, you know what I'm talking about. And I just promise you that I will always work hard and do what's right.
My son was called a political football that nobody in Bartow County wanted to touch. That was what he was told by the DA, the juvenile DA, and they got in that empty chair right beside you on your left.
Well, sir, I cannot ever, like I said, anyone that would state that, I'm probably going to question their sanity. A political football involving the death of a child is a poor choice of words, sir. And like I said, I'm speechless when it comes to your predicament, and I will do everything I can in my power and use your that loss in our community as that we'll always use our officers that look at this case study, look at what happened here. We must never repeat that, and I vow I won't repeat that, sir. All right. Yes, sir.
If you get sheriff, do you think you can bring the morale up better than what it is right now? I talked to a deputy Wednesday, and he said that the morale was so bad in the sheriff's department that nobody could talk to each other. Everybody's biting each other's head off.
Morale is critical. Morale for people to serve. You have to be motivated in law enforcement. You get hard-hearted, and like I said, there's several of us in here that's been in law enforcement, and it's easy to lose your focus and get used to that I can get by with things. It takes leadership, and that leadership has to fight for those officers, have to motivate those officers, make sure that those officers are well paid, make sure that there's nothing such as nepotism, cronyism, or anything that stands, that they know that they have a leader they'll fight for them and will always stand by their side and lead them and be a working sheriff. That's what I plan on doing. I'm not going to just tell somebody to do something. I'm going to show them, and I'm going to be a part of this community. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to motivate as much as I can And and in community policing, those officers, they really do care. You don't go and become a law enforcement officer no more than you do it for a job. You do it because it's a calling. And when it's a calling, you'll do your job and you'll do it proudly. And because sometimes when you see that victim look at you and give that nod, regardless of what's happened in their life, and see that they appreciate you, that's what drives most people in their callings for serving citizens. And the morale issues is we're going to have to work hard on it, because we can't, as citizens, we can't afford to keep losing officers due to low morale, the turnover. We can't become a training agency for other counties that they just come in here and take training for 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, or we lose those seasoned officers that are 7 years, 12 years, 15 years, and they walk out the door. We've lost thousands, and far more than just a week-to-week paycheck. It takes a long time to get your investment back on what you invest in an officer. If you hire him from a new hire, it's 2 to 3 years before you start getting return on your investment. And it all starts with leadership. All right?
Got one more. My son's worked for the sheriff's department for 17 years, Bartow County. And he worked with you for 17 years. And he said you were the go-to guy when things got tough for Don Thurman and Sheriff Millsap. And I just wanted you to know that how much he thought of you, and he thinks you'll be the best sheriff anybody could ever have. And that's because he's in North Carolina and he can't be here.
That's very humbling to hear. And but I was part of a team. I worked with some really good men, or Don Thurman, and some of those men are still there. There's good men that work at this department. Don't get me wrong. This isn't about the department and the officers there. I worked hard. I've told many of you, some of you I've worked with, some of you I went to SWAT school with. There's probably been many times in my life that there was somebody watching over me. I should have probably been killed numerous times in my life, but I've been well blessed and very fortunate, and that it just wasn't my time. But they did. I was asked to do my job, and it was my job, and I was paid to do that job, and I did that job. And as your sheriff, there's no difference. I still have that fire in me and that fight in me, that whatever it takes to get the job done at the end of the day, I will do. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of residents in Bartow County that are actually afraid of the sheriff's department and the people in the sheriff's department, and afraid of saying anything because they might get, something might happen to them. How can you change that mentality of the residents of Bartow County?
First off, if anyone tells me they're afraid of a police officer, that's a problem to begin with. You shouldn't fear the police. The only people that should fear the police are the criminals, the drug dealers, those people wishing to prey upon our children, our citizens, our seniors. Those are the people that should fear law enforcement. A good, hard-working, honest citizen should never have to fear law enforcement. If there's an officer out there that's abusing, that he believes that he has to be threatening in any shape, form, or fashion, we can be professional. There's nothing that says being professional, you have to be, and you have to prove yourself as a tough guy. That's not part of law enforcement. You serve the needs, you meet the needs of citizens, and you do what's right. Just because you have the right to do some things sometimes doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And there's no need for officers to ever be disrespectful to citizens, be abusive to citizens, or threatening. And I won't allow it, because I guarantee you, there is no officer down there that I fear. And as your sheriff, they'll learn that rather quickly. All right? Y'all want to get to the jug here? I have no idea what's in this jug. All right. Now, I guess to verify what's in this jug, I guess, does anybody want to? Yes, you're,
I'll just read it to you.
okay. I don't know if it's a good thing when you got a Steve Holloway for sheriff's shirt on. I'm trying to be fair and impartial here, guys.
Will you maintain a high standard of ethics for yourself and your deputies?
The ethics starts with training. It starts hiring good people, hiring moral people, and hiring people that will do their job and do it right. Absolutely. Anyone that doesn't have the proper training, and anyone in this department that doesn't meet and have high ethics is a department that's in trouble. And I won't allow that to serve our citizens, anyone that's not ethical. If it's something rude or something otherwise, we'll give verification on any of these, because like I said, I have no idea what's in there.
What, in your opinion, do you as sheriff need to do to cut down on crime in the southern part of the county?
Not only the southern part of the county, our crime is rampant within the cities, throughout the county. It's high in the city of Cartersville. Actually, the city of Cartersville has the highest crime ranking of any city in Bartow County. I have the numbers. I'll be glad to share those with you if anyone has any questions. But it's just not the south part of the county. To address that crime issues, like I said, we're going to have to restructure the sheriff's office. We're going to have to unite our communities and unite the neighborhood watch. We're going to have to create databases where citizens can be made aware of trends and crimes that's happening in their neighborhood and let them be forewarned. And also to assist them in hardening and being less of a target for crime. Okay?
If elected, what would be the first change you would make inside your office?
Wow, that's a big one, because you have everything from the morale issues to the crime and drug issues to serving our citizens and protecting our children. The first thing I probably will do is that we're going to have to go in there and restructure and make sure that the citizens are well served and protected first. We're going to have to make sure that our manpower is allocated to best serve our citizens.
Would you put more deputies in place?
Is that it?
Well, there's more, but I don't.
Okay. If it's one of those, if someone else would concur with that, that's all it needs to be asked, and that's what we'll go with.
Comments, only one in north and one in south doesn't keep anything under control.
Okay. They're talking about zoning issues, and we'll have more officers in place. What we're going to look at, and what I have to do in my administration, is we're going to have to create community policing. We're going to have to get where officers are from your community. And the officers that are not currently within a community, they'll be from the community closest to you. We're going to have to be out there, and we're going to have to recruit. There's a lot of officers that live in Bartow County that work in adjoining counties. And so we're going to have to go in there and see if I can't steal them. The ones that are vetted and that wish to stay in this community and serve our community. And when we do that, Bartow County will be far better served.
If a citizen reports a drug house, what is done?
Known drug houses, we will, to attack drugs, you have to attack the supply, the demand, and change the environment. Drug houses, drug dealers, pushers, whatever you want to call them, low life that destroy our communities. We will go in that community, to that drug house, We can change the environment simply by placing a car or checkpoints entering that area. People that are coming to that area to buy drugs, they're under the influence of drugs. You just don't go pick up one day and say, I'm going to go try a little meth. You're already addicted to it. You're coming there. You're under the influence. We can attack the demand from drugs that way. We can go in there and build a case and go to that drug house. There's no amount of drugs, of illegal drugs, that they can possess. They may be on probation or otherwise. We'll use whatever courts allow us to use to seize those drugs, close them down, and do it in a quick manner. Not standing by doing a 2.5, 3 year and letting families be destroyed. But when you go in there and you change that environment by placing those officers from those communities to those known drug houses, and you apply pressure to those drug dealers, they can't take that pressure. They have no word. They don't have saving plans. They don't have anything they can do. They can't make a living. We want them to go to another community, somewhere else, far, far away from Bartow County. And I will do everything in my power to encourage that, from placing my deputies there to doing searches, to speaking to them. There's nothing wrong with walking up to a man that you know is a drug dealer and telling him, I know who you are, I know what you're doing, and I'm going to try to send you to prison just as quick as I can.
Why do Bartow County Sheriff's Office cars pass an accident without stopping?
Well, in their defense, I don't know which accident. There could be a call volume. They could be going from call to call. But now if they pass the accident without knowing if there's injuries or not, that's unsatisfactory. They should be at least checking to see if what injuries are occurred. But now as far as accidents involved in Bartow County with my deputies, that we're often called to assist GSP and do standbys, direct traffic until GSP can arrive. That is a waste of manpower, both for GSP officers, the troopers, and for our officers of standing by. If it's something simple that can be handled, we'll write that. You know, there's nothing that difficult about filling out an accident report. It's something that can be done in 10 or 15 minutes. But when you have an officer standing there, and either he could take care of that call in 15 minutes, or if he stands by for an hour to allow GSP to get there and take care of that call in 15 minutes, that's a waste. And we will address those issues. And if it's something major that GSP has to come and work, we'll let GSP come and work. But we're not going to let officers drive by accidents without checking, making sure that the citizens are okay and not in danger of There's quite a few questions in there.
This one's for Mr. Culpepper.
Excellent.
Mr. Culpepper, explain why you forced 2 officers to resign for praying.
Oh, that's for Mr. Culpepper. I thought it was from him. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I will forward that question to him and let him address that.
The security at the jail doesn't seem to be good. Very often in the blotter, I see where they have been caught trying to get contraband into the jail. If security was tighter, would they even try?
I'm going to fall back to the other question of what Mr. Culpepper, I have no idea what his answer will be about prayer, but I can tell you what my administration's views will be about prayer. My administration views about prayer is I cannot think of a group of inmates or people that are in prison that need prayer more. They need to have the ability that ministries come in there on a voluntary process and come in and allow those inmates to have a chance at saving their souls, their salvation, and maybe changing their lives so that they're no longer predators or criminals. Sometimes it is. We often see it that sometimes it's just a kind word, opening of the heart, that changes a person's life. And so we must always fight and make sure that that ability of that ministry can enter those areas. And back to the other one.
Security at the jail doesn't seem to be very good. Very often in the blotter, I see where they have been caught trying to get contraband into the jail. If security was tighter, would they even try?
Like I said, the drug addiction, they're going to try. Those addicts will do anything to get those drugs in there. So you may not be able to stop them trying, but we most certainly can make sure that we have the best policies, procedures, and make it as difficult that they will not be able to get there. Sometimes you may have where, you know, you can look in the news and you see where sometimes it's actual guards or prison personnel that allow those drugs in there. And we have to face that fact. And like I said, if that is ever discovered, that will be not a pleasant experience for that person. We will make sure that the full extent of the law is thrown upon them.
In 20 years plus, drugs in the west end of Bartow have escalated. This I know for a fact. Why in the past have drug problems not been taken care of? My grandchildren are not allowed to visit because of this. If elected, will this issue surrounding drugs in Bartow be taken care of? Children are living with parents of dealers. This is not acceptable. Children are living with parents who are dealers.
Child endangerment, any child that lives in a house where meth is being cooked, it is absolutely killing them and destroying them. The effects of what some of these children and what they're having to face and live with, not going to school or even going to school, and the effects of what some of these drugs have on them, that's something that, you know, is going to be close to my heart, that we have to face those issues, address those issues, and do it swiftly and quickly. You know, just I feel for the families that live near these known drug houses, and like I said earlier, having a known drug house is about the worst thing that I can ever imagine. That is probably the greatest indicator that we do need change. And that what do we have to change? We have to change the leadership of how and our sheriff's office targets and what priorities the sheriff's office has. You know, if the sheriff's office priority is not attacking drug dealers, I have no idea what their priorities should be. But I know what my priority will be. And that is the safety of children and also taking care of these drug houses.
There's two questions here. One is for Clark Millsap, and then the second one is for all three. And they tie together. The question from Mr. Millsap is, why is the crime rate in Bartow higher per capita than all neighboring counties? Then the question for everybody is, what will you do to change that?
16 years, you have to ask Mr. Millsap, of course, he'll have to say what his priority was in those 16 years. I have no idea. But I can tell you where we currently are. We are that the crime ratio for Bartow County is the highest of any of the ones that share the I-75 corridor. And Bartow County citizens deserve better. We pay some of the highest per capita of our budget. Bartow County is a $20+ million budget, but we get a return of high crime. It should be the other way around. That if we're one of the top paying per capita on our budgets, then we should be one of the lowest crime rates. We should have a great return on To fight that issue is, like I said earlier, we're going to have to go out and unite our communities, create databases, inform our citizens, motivate our law enforcement officers, get the community policing established, and make sure that these officers are doing their job, and make sure the community knows that when they report something, it will be addressed. It will be addressed quickly. I'm seeing the bottom of the jar now.
Why do deputies have the excuse that they are too busy to respond to calls? And this is apparently from a specific person, waited 45 minutes at the jail for a response.
That's probably a lot to do with how the shortage of manpower and that the personnel are not being properly used and allotted to and assigned to duties that ensure that we don't have that 45-minute wait. There's within that jail, you have jail officers that are certified, mandated. You have investigators. I don't know the time frame that occurred, but there's a lot of personnel that you could direct and ensure, and from the community policing standpoint also, that will address those issues. And right now, their excuse, and it's probably is correct, that they're being driven, they're wore out. They're having, that the road deputies are going from call to call to call due to call volume. And it's all due to that, either a combination of not proper assignments or the short manpower. And it's just a matter of restructuring that department, which my administration will do.
If elected, will your officers be given more training to aid them in doing their jobs as deputies? Some don't take their job seriously. Will you weed them out?
If there's anyone that doesn't serve the citizens and doesn't wish to be a law enforcement officer and serve our citizens and protect them, then if they're there for a paycheck, I'm not in the position that in my administration I'm going to hire mercenaries just for a check. People are going to have commitment to serve and protect. It's part of our oath, and nothing less will be tolerated. There's another part to that question other than...
Well, some don't take their job seriously. Will you weed them out?
Absolutely.
Why are you running for sheriff?
I want to make a difference. To have an impact on your community, you have to have a certain love for that community. And I do. I believe in Bartow County. Bartow County is worth fighting for. And I'll fight for Bartow County. And leadership is simple, that if you see a problem, that as a leader, you identify, how can I solve that problem? And I see that the way I can solve this problem is run for sheriff. And if it's elected your sheriff, I'll fight for you.
Why do I hear the term known drug house?
That's from neighbors who have seen the transactions. It can be from neighbors. It can be from officers. It can be from the community, that you see the traffic in and out of the house. You see the drug paraphernalia. You see the exchange of money. There's indicators out there. You can go out and look. Anyone that's ever lived next to a drug house knows what it was. These people, they're addicted, and they're not bashful on getting their drugs. They don't hide. Some of them are a little bit better educated and a little bit more discreet than others. But generally, you can see either from the gang activity to the way that households are run, what times of night the visitors come. Those are what the known drug houses are. And all we've got to do is make sure that the community understands that when you report those known drug houses, we're going to act. We're going to act swiftly and make a difference.
Will your family be employed in any capacity if you are elected?
My grandmother was one of 13 children. I have cousins out there. I probably have some cousins in this room that we don't know yet because she was, I think there was 10 girls or 11 girls in that family. But no, I will not be hiring anyone that I know of. If they're going to have to be third cousins or out or second cousin once removed, but I'm not going to hire anyone because when you hire people that's part of your family, you have that mark of nepotism. You have chain of command issues. You have work environment issues. There's a lot of negatives that come along with nepotism, and I don't want that for our department. It's not good for the morale of the department, and we don't want that water cooler politics where people saying you only got that job because of who you are. That's not going to be part of my department. I won't allow it.
If or when you are elected, what are you going to change? Do you see yourself getting rid of the drug problems?
We're going to have an impact on drug problems. Our society and the acceptance of what drugs is changes. We have states that are now allowing marijuana to be legalized. There's going to be drug issues across this country, and it's going to take an act of Congress to decide where our future in drugs and what drugs are legalized and what drugs we're going to fight against. We're always going to have drug issues, but we have to do everything we can to ensure that our communities, our families, that the impact and the effects that we suffer are minimized. And I'll do that as your sheriff.
Last one. How will you improve the ability of deputies to communicate with citizens without demeaning them?
As I said earlier, I believe professional leadership will lead to professional officers. You just got to provide the leadership for them. Show them what is expected of them, and they will. They know what it is to serve. They know what it is to protect, and we just got to relight that fire and show them in our communities when they start seeing an impact and a difference in our communities, that the community they're a part of that family, and respect gets respect, and it's that simple. I was raised respect your elders. Be very respectful of your mother, and I've lived by that rule, and I always will, and I must make sure my officers also live by that rule. Yes, sir.
So you said when you're elected, if you're elected and when you're elected, your oath is to serve and protect.
Absolutely.
Is that going to be protect all people across Bartow County, or is it going to be the 1%, the special interest, the rich people in Bartow County versus the normal every Joe? Is he going to get the same kind of serving and protecting as, say, the Dillingers?
I don't know any relationship between the current and incumbent and any of those. But I can tell you this, I'm not owned by anybody, and I'll never be owned by anybody. The law is the law. I came from a very humble background. My father was in law enforcement in the 60s. He made $75 a week. He wasn't owned by anybody either. And you apply the law fairly and justly. There's no one above the law. And I will always live by that rule. And I don't believe that you as citizens deserve any less. That y'all deserve, it is a commitment on my part, and I will never, ever turn my back, regardless of what your background is and how much money you make. That has nothing to do with the respect I have for a good, honest, hardworking citizen.
Donald Devine, I'm retired from South Florida in law enforcement. Question, does the current administration have what they call a community service division? Do we know?
I'm sure they have some posse, they have some reserve officers, and I don't know, but I know most certainly that my department will. I see the power of volunteers. I see it every week. I'll see the power of some of those volunteers tomorrow morning. But you, as a community, we can come together and we can make this a great county. It's just a matter of uniting and working together.
And what I saw, in South Florida was we actually employed community service aides to handle non-emergency calls to free up road deputies to respond to the more serious in-progress type calls. So that might be a consideration. I didn't know if the current administration has it.
No, I've looked at some of those programs, Citizens on Patrol. Florida's really big on it, and I believe some in South Carolina. There's nothing wrong with those programs, and most certainly I'll look into that as will that take some of the load off of our officers, because that's what it's going to take. If we're going to have great officers and build that morale and keep officers and be able to recruit officers from Bartow County, we have to work on their pay too. These officers are dedicated. What it costs an officer to support his family, it's no different than y'all. You know the struggles of working a job and supporting your family. Officers face the same. They're underpaid and overworked. It's just like with anybody. And we have to address those issues and make sure they get the best pay. Citizens on Patrol, absolutely, we'll look into those programs.
If you get in office, are you gonna have an open door, or are you gonna hide behind the door and tell your secretary, tell them that you ain't there?
I'm pretty sure tonight proved the point where I'm gonna be. I spent the money to make sure that I was gonna be accessible. I'll not hide from, the day that I hide from a citizen that has a question for me, y'all go ahead and just start, y'all won't even have to recall me, I'll quit. Because the moment that you can't sit in front of your citizens and look them in the eye and talk about, regardless of what the problem is, doesn't matter if you argue with that person every day, I'm still your sheriff. You still have the right. You pay your taxes. You have a right to talk to me, regardless of what your political views, outlooks. If I have the time, that's what being sheriff is. You have to face the challenges. Is it a moment's notice that something comes up and someone has a question for you? I know it's going to be a difficult job. It's going to be a great toll on me and my family and everything, but I'm accepting that. It's what I believe that I have to commit to this community to make a difference, and I will do that. I'll have that open door policy, just like tonight. There's nothing you can ask me that I won't answer. I might blush, but I'll answer it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Holloway, even if you got a prisoner in your jail, they are somebody's loved ones. If you have somebody, like I said, that was down, unconscious, is there any way that you can get them to the hospital quicker that you might could save their loved one's life, or when they're unresponsive?
Part of the training and everything is make sure that everyone that has the medical knowledge and training to make sure that they're able to do those life-saving CPR or whatever it takes to ensure that that inmate has a chance at living, and making sure the procedures and protocols are in place to ensure those that 911 dispatches that ambulance quickly. We have a medical facility up there. I don't know of the circumstance of the tragedy that happened and what happened there, but we only have one side right now on that. But my administration will focus that should that occur, that the officers will be well-trained, will be professional, and make sure that they get the party in question to for medical assistance as quickly as possible.
And 12/1, I was arrested and I spent the night in Bartow County Jail. And I've been sitting there and I sort of walked. The guy that was handling me, putting me in my cell, he was very nice. And he said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, you better be, because the only way you get out of here is if you flatline." He was serious. I mean, but I mean, he was just telling me what the score was.
Well, like I said, I'm going to employ professional officers, and they're going to be held to the highest standard. And they're going to make sure that every citizen is treated fairly. That's all I can promise you as your sheriff, is that I'll work hard and I'll do what's right. And I'll make sure that my officers, if they want to have a job with me, they're going to have to meet that exact standard. All right. Anyone else? Well, this has about been the one-sidedest debate I've ever seen.
Won the debate.
Oh, me. Yeah. Well, I want to do more than just win the debate. I want Bartow County to win. And as your sheriff, I'll do what I can to make sure you do that. I'll be around. We got this place until, we got about another 35 minutes. If y'all have any questions for me, just ask me anything and I'll answer it. And I appreciate y'all coming out. I appreciate y'all showing the interest of coming out and to show that, and put me to task so that you understand what I'm about. And like I said, this is about you. It's about whenever you're in Bartow County, that I will always fight for the citizens, regardless of their standing in the community. I will always fight for you, and I appreciate y'all coming out. I appreciate the questions. I hope I've answered more questions than I raised. And at any point during this campaign, feel free to call me. There's nothing secretive about this campaign. There wasn't going to be anything secretive about this debate. The three of us were going to moderate, because if we can't moderate and interact with our citizens as candidates for sheriff, we most certainly don't need to be sheriff. And I look forward. Yes, sir.
Who decided that we wouldn't have a debate this year? Who was it that decided that everybody running for the office wouldn't debate like we have in the past?
All I know is that I was contacted by a radio station, and that radio station told me about a month ago now, a little over a month ago, that we was going to have a debate at the Grand Theater. Public was going to come, newspaper was going to come, the radio station was going to be there, and the GOP. 6 days prior to it, I received notice that it wasn't going to be at the Grand at 7 p.m. on that Thursday. It was going to be at 7 a.m. in the morning. GOP wasn't going to be there. Citizens weren't going to be there, but that citizens could be out on the sidewalk. But and that the newspaper wasn't going to be there. Just going to be 2 radio announcers and the candidates. And I went. Didn't understand what the rules were going to be, but the day before I got the rules, and I would have went, because it doesn't bother me. Like I said, I'll face any challenge you throw to me. But I don't know for what reasons they did that. You'd have to ask the radio station. But they chose, the way it was explained to me, that logistics and the cost was going to be too much. And so I said I didn't believe that was right. And so at that moment, I came here, went over to the city rec, rented this building so that the citizens could gather and speak to the candidates. Unfortunately, I'm the only candidate that showed, but fortunately, y'all showed, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you think you and your wife could have me a big sign made by in the morning?
No, sir. We're out. Appreciate it. Well, I appreciate y'all coming, guys, and thank y'all.